You drink it every morning, you've ordered it hundreds of times. You know what you like, but if I handed you 2 cups right now, are same color, same temperature, same roast, and asked you what was different about the beans, most people couldn't tell you, not even close. They'd look identical, smell almost the same. Nothing obvious to grab onto. And that's where it gets strange. Because it's not that the difference isn't there, it's that most people have no idea what they're supposed to be looking for. Which means every cup you've ever had that you've been guessing, that's the part nobody tells you. The bean species? That's actually the least interesting part of the story. And once you see what's really shaping the flavor, you start to realize something: most people haven't actually tasted coffee yet. Let's start where they think it begins. What people think coffee is, 2 words. That's most people's entire map. Arabica, Robusta. Arabica is what you think of as good coffee. Smooth, complex, fruity, floral, sweet, depending on where it's grown. About 60 to 70% of all global production. Almost everything specialty coffee is built around. It's delicate, high altitude, vulnerable to disease. That's why it costs more. Then there's Robusta. You've had this, probably this week. Instant coffee, Robusta. A lot of Italian espresso blends, Robusta. Most commercial supermarket coffee, Robusta or a blend. Stronger, more bitter, earthy, roughly double the caffeine. It handles heat, lower elevation, pests. Built for scale in a way Arabica isn't. Not bad coffee, just a different job. Most people think coffee starts and ends here. It doesn't even start here. This is where coffee stops tasting like what you think it is. The beans you've never heard of. There are over 100 species of coffee, but only a handful ever make it into your cup. You know 2. Here are the other 2, and they're stranger than you'd expect. Liberica. The beans look different before you even taste them. Larger, irregular, almost misshapen. The flavor? Nothing like Arabica or Robusta. Smoky, woody, sometimes floral in a way that hits you before the cup even reaches your lips. This one splits people, hard. In parts of the Philippines, Malaysia, West Africa, Liberica isn't an exotic curiosity, it's just coffee. Entire regional palates built around a bean most Western coffee drinkers have never touched, Excelsa. This is the hidden one. Now generally classified as part of the Liberica family, rarely labeled on bags. That's because Excelsa isn't usually the main act. It's used to add brightness and complexity to blends. Tart, fruity, lighter-bodied. On its own, it's unusual. Mixed in, it quietly rewires the entire character of a cup without you ever knowing it was there. There's a good chance you've had Excelsa, you just had no idea. So, 4 species, you know all of them now. But here's the part that breaks most people's mental model. Knowing the species tells you almost nothing about what the coffee will actually taste like. This is where people get lost. The plot twist. This is where almost everyone gets it wrong. The species is the category. The variety is where flavor actually lives. Think of it like this. Arabica is like saying a car. It tells you almost nothing about the actual experience. Is it a pickup truck, a sports car, a minivan? Same category, completely different reality. Inside Arabica, there are thousands of named varieties, different genetics, different trees, different flavor outcomes. Most modern Arabica varieties trace back to 2 primary lineages, Typica and Bourbon. These are the founding families of modern Arabica. If you've ever had a great cup of coffee, at home, at a cafe, at an airport that somehow had one good spot, it almost certainly traces back to one of these 2 or a cross between them. Typica is the original line, carried out of Ethiopia, cultivated in Yemen, spread by Dutch traders across their colonial trade routes until it landed in Latin America, Asia, the Caribbean. Clean, sweet, high quality, but low yield, which means less coffee per tree, which means farmers eventually needed something better. Bourbon emerged separately, a natural mutation that appeared on the island of Réunion, which the French called Île Bourbon. More fruit per tree, natural sweetness and body, but disease vulnerable, which set off decades of breeding programs trying to capture bourbon's flavor without the fragility. Every name you see on a specialty bag, it comes from this. The names on the bags. This is where it starts to split. Same species, same founding bloodlines, but from here, the flavor possibilities go in completely different directions, and each variety has a reputation. Caturra, a natural dwarf mutation of bourbon. Compact tree, high yield, very common across Latin America. You've had this, probably more times than you can count. Catuai, a cross between Mundo Novo and Caturra, even more compact, even higher yield. This runs a massive percentage of Brazil's commercial coffee output. When people think Brazilian coffee, this is usually it. Mundo Novo, a natural Typica bourbon cross, vigorous, disease-resistant, productive, the workhorse. This is the bean that kept Brazilian coffee relevant for decades when other regions were struggling. Pacamara, this one shouldn't work. A hybrid of two varieties, Pacas and Maragogipe. The beans are noticeably large. The flavor can be intense, complex, almost confrontational. In the right hands, Pacamara cups win competitions. In the wrong hands, they're just weird. It's one of those varieties that demands a skilled producer because the ceiling is high and so is the floor. Geisha, this one changed everything. Originally from Ethiopia, from a region called Gesha, which is where the name comes from. Planted in Panama in the 1960s almost as an afterthought, sat there for decades, nobody paid attention. Then in 2004, a farm called Hacienda La Esmeralda entered a Panamanian geisha into a competition. The judges tasted it and thought it was mislabeled. It didn't taste like what people expected coffee to taste like. It tasted like jasmine tea, floral, bergamot, almost transparent in the way it hit the palate. They went back and checked the label. It was right. That was just what geisha tasted like. That one cup changed the trajectory of specialty coffee. Geisha became the most expensive commercially available coffee in the world. Auction lots now sell for hundreds of dollars per pound, and farms that never would have bothered with it started planting it everywhere. SL28 and SL34, developed in Kenya by the Scott Agricultural Laboratories in the 1930s, bred originally for drought resistance. Nobody anticipated how they'd taste. Bright, complex. A specific black currant note that shows up in well-grown SL28 that's distinct even among specialty coffees. If you've had a great Kenyan coffee, that's almost certainly what you tasted. There are thousands of named varieties beyond these, but you've just learned more than most coffee drinkers ever will. The underground. Now past the specialty coffee world, past what any cafe carries, because there are entire species most people will never taste, and one of them might be the most important bean in the world right now. Coffea eugenioides is one of the two original ancestors of Arabica. Arabica is a natural hybrid, a spontaneous cross between Robusta and eugenioides that happened somewhere in the Ethiopian forests thousands of years ago. Eugenioides itself has very low caffeine, soft, sweet, almost delicate. For a long time, nobody thought it was viable at scale. Then, experimental producers in Colombia started offering micro lots from it at prices that made geisha look reasonable. Coffea stenophila went commercially extinct for nearly a century. Nobody was growing it. Almost nobody knew it existed outside of botanical records. Then researchers went into the forests of Sierra Leone and found it still growing wild. What they found mattered more than the rediscovery. In early blind tastings, some experts couldn't reliably distinguish stenophila from Arabica. The flavor profile held up against specialty-grade cups. This isn't niche anymore. Stenophila can survive temperatures that would kill an Arabica plant, and the climate projections for Arabica growing regions over the next several decades are not good. Rising temperatures, shifting rainfall. Climate projections suggest large portions of current Arabica growing land may become less viable over time. Stenophila isn't a novelty. It might be the next coffee. Most people haven't heard of it. Almost nobody has tasted it. And it might be in your cup before you retire. The real truth. Here's what all of this was building to. The bean is just the start. This is why two coffees that look identical can taste completely different to you. Even if you know every species, every variety, every bloodline, you still don't know what the coffee will taste like until you factor in everything else. Where it was grown. Ethiopia versus Brazil versus Colombia versus Vietnam produces completely different flavor, even from the same variety. And within that, altitude might matter more than most people realize. Higher altitude coffee grows slower. The cherries take longer to develop, which concentrates sugars inside the bean. And that's where a lot of the complexity comes from. Lower altitude, faster growth, bigger yields, but usually simpler flavor. That's why a high-altitude Ethiopian coffee can taste bright and floral, while a lower-altitude Brazilian coffee from the same species tastes heavier, more chocolatey. How it was processed. A washed coffee, where the fruit is removed before the bean dries, tastes clean, bright, precise. A natural process coffee, where the bean dries inside the fruit, can taste rich, jammy, sometimes even wine-like. Same bean, one decision after harvest, completely different cup. How it was roasted. Take an Ethiopian heirloom, washed, light roast. You might taste lemon, jasmine, bergamot. Roast that same bean, dark, most of that disappears. Chocolate, smoke, bitterness. The roaster is making creative decisions that fundamentally change what reaches your palate. So when someone says they've tried every type of coffee bean, what they mean is they've barely scratched the surface of one species on one continent from one processing tradition, roasted one way. Coffee isn't a drink, it's a system. Most people think they know what coffee tastes like. They've just never gone past the first page. Next video, we're going deep on processing, washed versus natural versus honey process, why the same farm, same harvest, same tree can produce two completely different cups based on one decision made in the first 24 hours after picking. Subscribe so you're there when it drops, and drop a comment. What's the best cup you've ever had? Because now you might actually know why it tasted that way.